Isabella lies motionless on her bed, still clad in her new blue dress, the fabric slightly wrinkled from hours of stillness. Above her, dark clouds loom. She stares unblinkingly, lost in the tangled thoughts circling her mind, replaying the events of the afternoon. A tempest of emotions churns within her. Anger at having her work claimed by another, yet an undeniable satisfaction in knowing that people have enjoyed her words, felt something from them. A knock at the door breaks the silence. She doesn't move. A pause. Then the door creaks open slightly. "Isabella." Vittorio's voice is gentle, cautious. "I haven't seen you all evening. Are you all right?" Eyes still fixed on the ceiling, Isabella's voice emerges flat, distant. "I'm fine." Vittorio lingers, sensing the hollowness in her words. He softens his tone further. "Are you hungry? Do you need anything?" Isabella shifts, rolling onto her side to face the wall, her back to him. Her voice is muffled but firm. "I'm not hungry. Just leave me alone." A weighted silence fills the space between them. Finally, the door closes, and Isabella is left alone once more. As the days pass, Isabella remains unable to resolve her dilemma. A week after witnessing Rolando Lovati's recital, the frustration still lingers, gnawing at the edges of her thoughts. She needs answers, or at the very least, clarity. Today, she completes the preparation of an elderly woman for burial, her mind already set on her next course of action. The plan is simple: return to the market at the same time as before, hoping that Lovati's recitation is a weekly occurrence. If fate is kind, she will find him there again. The air is colder, the sky a uniform gray, pressing low over Padua. Isabella wraps herself in a heavy shawl that drapes over her shoulders and conceals most of her form, warding off the chill as she makes her way toward the market. Once there, her eyes sweep over the usual array of performers, jugglers, minstrels, and street orators, but there is no sign of Signor Lovati. She moves through the stalls, scanning the faces around her, but something unexpected catches her eye. A mirror. Not the flimsy kind made of polished silver or bronze, the type that distorts as much as it reflects, but a real mirror crafted from Venetian glass. She stops in her tracks. It is the first time she has seen such a flawless reflection outside of water, or the faint, imperfect images cast on her window at night. But neither compare to this. A quiet excitement stirs within her as she turns to the shopkeeper. "May I hold it?" The merchant, gauging the interest in her eyes, nods and carefully hands it over. Isabella lifts it, angling the glass to catch the light, her breath momentarily hitching as she sees herself with a clarity she never has before. Every fine detail, her eyes, the subtle curve of her lips, the way the afternoon light catches the strands of her brown hair, feels new, as if she is meeting herself for the first time. "How much?" she asks, still studying her reflection. "For this silver-framed mirror, 8 inches in size, 60 soldi," the shopkeeper replies smoothly. Isabella exhales sharply, shaking her head. "That is far too expensive." The merchant, unfazed, reaches beneath the counter and produces a smaller version, about 5 inches across. "I also have this one for 35 soldi." She takes it, inspecting the delicate craftsmanship, the intricate blend of silver and bronze that adorns the edges. The glass is just as flawless, the image just as crisp. She tilts it slightly, catching the gleam in her own eyes. "I don't have such an amount with me today," she admits, reluctantly handing it back. "But next week I'll return." The shopkeeper nods, slipping the mirror back into its display. Isabella offers a polite smile and bids him farewell before continuing her search. Isabella continues looking, weaving through the market square where performers captivate the gathering crowds. The cold seeps through her clothing, biting at her skin despite the heavy shawl wrapped around her. She exhales into her hands, rubbing them together for warmth when finally she spots him, the imposter. Rolando Lovati strides toward the small wooden stage, moving with the confidence of a seasoned performer. The man stands at a respectable height, with dark brown hair, a sun-kissed complexion, and strikingly desirable features. His piercing eyes radiate confidence. He steps onto the platform, straightens his posture, and offers a theatrical bow. A handful of spectators, mostly women, clap enthusiastically before he even speaks. Isabella edges closer, though she remains at the back, watching from the shadows. Rolando begins with a speech on eternal love. How it endures, how it transcends even death. His words are poetic, his delivery impassioned, yet the sentiment itself is unoriginal. He basks in the attention, playing his role effortlessly. Then, with a seamless transition, he moves into one of Isabella's poems. She knows every line before he utters it. She anticipates every pause, every carefully chosen word. Yet, as much as it enrages her to hear her stolen work spoken by another, she cannot deny that his delivery is masterful. His voice carries through the square with warmth and conviction, his gestures adding weight to the imagery. He infuses emotion into the words, making them his own in a way that both captivates and unsettles her. Isabella shifts her gaze to the audience. Despite the freezing air, the women listening seem transported, their faces softened, their hands clasped to their chests. Some sigh dreamily, their expressions melting like candle wax under the glow of his voice. When the recital ends, the crowd erupts into applause, their enthusiasm growing in intensity. Rolando raises a hand, silencing them just enough to continue speaking. With a well-practiced smile, he explains how he was inspired to write this particular piece. A vision of a maiden walking in the park on a beautiful morning, a fleeting moment of beauty that stirred his soul. Isabella scoffs under her breath, shaking her head at his audacity. What a brazen liar. Without hesitation, he introduces his next poem, dedicating it to his beloved sister, newly wed. Isabella tenses. She recognizes the piece immediately. It is one of her favorites, a sonnet woven with longing and quiet devotion. And yet, as he recites it, she finds herself drawn in despite her indignation. His voice gives new shape to the verses, his cadence lending a depth even she had not considered. She catches herself smiling at the end of the sonnet, the words still echoing in her mind. Once again, the crowd bursts into cheers. Though no more than 30 people are gathered, their energy makes it feel like 100. Rolando bows deeply, thanks them with practiced charm, and just like before, lingers only long enough to sell a few pamphlets before disappearing into the streets. Isabella follows. She keeps her distance, trailing him through the winding paths of the marketplace, her breath visible in the icy air. He moves without caution, slipping effortlessly into the eastern part of town. She watches from the street corner as he disappears down a quiet alleyway. Only when he is out of sight does Isabella feel the cold settling into her bones. Shivering, she tightens her shawl around herself and turns back toward home. While Vittorio and Donato remain occupied downstairs, crafting coffins in the workshop, the frozen ground making grave digging impossible. Isabella sits upstairs with a warm bowl of milk, her hands curled around it for heat. Rosso purrs on her lap, his small body radiating warmth. She stares into the misty surface of the milk, her thoughts circling back to the market, to Rolando, to the crowd's adoration. After much deliberation, she comes to a conclusion. Perhaps this is the best course of action. Let Rolando Lovati take the attention. He thrives on it, after all. He is a born orator, skilled in commanding the hearts of those who listen. And as much as it pains her, she knows that claiming her work would do her no favors. No one would believe that the poet behind such verses was an undertaker's niece. Worse, they might mock her, shame her for daring to step into a world that does not belong to women. No, better to let Rolando play his role. Through him, her words live. Through him, they are heard. Lifting the bowl to her lips, she takes a slow sip, the warmth spreading through her, easing the stiffness in her fingers. Her lips, still pink from the cold, pressed together in thought. This is how it must be. The next afternoon, the city is eerily quiet, wrapped in the same cold and gray stillness as the day before. In her dimly lit room, Isabella places a fresh log into the fireplace, the crackling flames offering the only warmth against the creeping chill. She wraps a thick shawl over her shoulders and settles at her desk, her stylus poised above the wax tablet, ready to carve emotion into form. Words that, if written well, will be etched into hearts. She closes her eyes. The murmurs of the market fade into memory, replaced by the rapt silence of an enraptured audience. She recalls their faces, their stillness, the way her verses seeped into them like ink into parchment. In her mind's eye, she isolates one young woman in the crowd, sees the moment her breath catches, her pupils widen, her body relaxes into the words as if surrendering to them. Then, Isabella imagines another presence. A man stepping behind the woman close enough that his body heat alone stirs longing. He does not touch her, yet she feels the weight of him, the awareness of his breath against her skin. His lips hover near her ear, his cheek barely grazing her hair as he murmurs soft, deliberate words. The warmth of his voice drapes over her like velvet, slipping beneath her shawl, through fabric and skin. It settles over her like a cloak, heavy with longing, making her breath hitch. A quiet heat unfurling deep within, stirring a desire she can no longer contain. A shiver runs through Isabella. Her stylus glides over the wax, crafting verses that embody this feeling, this delicate tension between restraint and desire. She feels it not only in her mind, but in her body. Her breath shallows, her fingers tremble slightly as she etches each syllable. When she lifts her head, still caught in the thrall of inspiration, her gaze drifts toward the window. She freezes. For a moment, she believes her eyes are deceiving her. The window, which so often distorts the outside world with its warped panes, now reveals something entirely new. Swiftly rising, she presses both hands and her forehead to the cold glass, her breath fogging against it. "This is like a dream," she whispers. Without hesitation, she dashes downstairs, the excitement in her chest unlike anything she has felt before. Flinging the door open, she stops abruptly at the threshold, overcome by the sight before her. Snow. For the first time in her life, she sees it. Delicate flakes, still too young to linger, dissolving the moment they kiss the earth. Stepping into the courtyard, she extends her palms, eager to capture the fragile magic before it disappears. For no reason at all, she stretches her arms wide and begins to spin, laughter spilling from her lips as she twirls beneath the falling sky. The world around her vanishes. There is only the cold air, the quiet hush of winter, and the fleeting wonder of snowfall. When she finally stops, breathless and giddy, she turns to find Vittorio standing by the doorway, watching her. His smile is wide but unreadable, something quiet and distant flickering behind his gaze. Isabella, mist curling from her lips, beams at him. "Isn't this wonderful?" Vittorio's gaze flickers briefly to the falling snow. "Yes, I have never seen anything more beautiful." Back in her room, buoyed by newfound inspiration, Isabella feels lighter, her imagination stirred by the gentle snowfall outside her window. Other stories take shape in her mind, tales of love as delicate and pure as the drifting snowflakes, romances untouched by the harshness of the world. Over the following weeks, she finds herself drawn back to the market time and again, lingering at the edges of the crowd, hidden beneath her shawl, watching Rolando perform. She tells herself it is only to hear her words come to life, to witness how the crowd responds to them. Yet deep down she knows it is more than that. She has become hooked, not only on the thrill of her stolen work receiving admiration, but on the way Rolando delivers it. His skillful recitations embolden her, feeding her confidence, allowing her to craft poetry that resonates even more deeply with the audience. As Isabella makes her way toward the square, wrapped tightly in her heavy shawl, two young men rush past her, their voices carrying on the crisp air. One of them is reciting something, her poetry, but it is clumsy, paraphrased beyond grace, while the other mocks the words in a theatrical, exaggerated tone. Their laughter spills into the street, carefree and unbothered. Isabella's steps slow. A flicker of irritation rises in her chest, but so does curiosity. Is she meant to be offended by their butchering of her words, or flattered that her verses are being passed around, however unrefined? She quickens her pace, trailing behind them just enough to listen. They turn a corner, and she follows, though she knows she is being foolish. What does she hope to achieve? But before she can convince herself to stop, she spots where they are heading. Toward Rolando. He is seated on a low wall, absorbed in the pages before him. The two men approach with the ease of longtime acquaintances, nudging him playfully, their teasing tone unmistakable. Isabella halts, instinctively retreating into the shadows of a corner, just close enough to observe unnoticed. The first man smirks. "So, Rolando, how's the poetry going?" Rolando barely looks up, still engrossed in his writing. One of them plops down beside him, peeking over his shoulder, while the other snatches a loose page from his hands with a dramatic flourish. Clearing his throat, he reads aloud in a pompous tone, "In this deep longing I will never see you more radiant." Rolando sighs, extending his hand with practiced patience. "Give it back." The man grins, bowing as if before a nobleman. "But of course, my lord." He returns the page, smirking. The second man leans in, more direct. "Why do you even bother with this? What does it bring you? I see young maidens throwing themselves at your feet, and yet you don't seem to take a single one to bed. If this is some elaborate game, it's a terrible one." Rolando's voice remains steady. "There's more to a woman than that. They have depth, emotions. Connecting with them, truly connecting, is far rarer than you think." The first man groans, throwing up his hands. "There you go again with your ridiculous musings on love and devotion. It won't get you anywhere. What I want to hear about is—" He smirks. "Their apples, their berries." The second man snickers. How deep the hollows go, and how it all ends in a race. Their laughter darkens the air. The first one grows more serious. "It's been months since you've come with us to the churches of love. You used to, in your wilder days." Rolando exhales, shaking his head. "I don't do that anymore. It feels shallow." The second man grins. "Not all of them are. Some are deep, as I recall." The first leans in conspiratorially. "We found a place with quite the selection." He tilts his head, voice dripping with amusement. "A fine course for 2 soldi, or if you prefer 2 fresh fruits for 5. And trust me, their peels are soft and glistening with heat." The second laughs. "Or, of course, something well-traveled. Only a single soldi. But you might walk away with more than you bargained for." They burst into laughter. Rolando rises with a calm, almost theatrical air. "I'm sorry, gentlemen, but fame waits for no one. My melodies are divine, like written by an angel for angels." He places a hand over his chest and bows mockingly. "I regret that you cannot comprehend them." Then he turns, straight toward Isabella. She panics. Looking right, she sees the next street corner is too far. She won't make it even if she runs. Her only chance is to walk past him without drawing suspicion. Straightening herself, she steps forward, but just as she rounds the corner, Rolando does the same, colliding into her. The impact is enough to knock Isabella off balance. She stumbles, nearly falling, her shawl slipping from her head. Rolando reacts quickly, reaching out, steadying her. "I'm sorry, Signora, I didn't see you." Isabella meets his gaze for the briefest moment, unable to find her voice. She hurriedly tugs her shawl back into place, concealing her features, while his hands linger just enough to gently help her upright. Rolando glances left and right, as if searching for someone to explain what just happened. "Are you all right?" She breathes sharply. "Yes, yes, yes." He starts to say something, "Would you like?" But Isabella doesn't wait. She dashes away, trotting past his friends without a second glance, her heart hammering. Rolando watches her retreat, tilting his head slightly in intrigue before continuing on his way to the square. Shaken, Isabella presses her back against the wall, steadying herself. She has walked far, driven by the need to escape, to put as much distance as possible between herself and the encounter. Her breath is uneven, her pulse still racing beneath her skin. Closing her eyes, she exhales slowly, forcing composure back into her limbs. "That's enough emotion for one day," she murmurs under her breath. The realization of how far she has wandered settles in. She is now nearly on the other side of the city, and the long walk home stretches ahead of her. Ample time to untangle the whirlwind of thoughts crowding her mind. Then, the week after, he does not appear. Isabella waits. The hours stretch long, the cold creeping under her shawl, but Rolando never comes. That evening, frustration takes hold, gnawing at her, leaving her restless and unable to write a single word. The following week, she returns to her usual spot, scanning the marketplace with growing anticipation still in the cold. Her heart pounds with every passing moment, the sheer act of waiting sending a nervous energy through her veins. Then, there he is. Moving swiftly through the crowd, Rolando approaches the small stage, but instead of heading straight there, he stops, right beside her. For an instant, Isabella's heart seizes. Too close. Panic flares in her chest, and instinctively she tightens her shawl around her face, shrinking into its folds. He stands there, unaware of her turmoil, watching the performance before him. Time stretches unbearably. From beneath the safety of her shawl, Isabella dares to look at him, really look. He is taller than her by a good 6 inches, his build that of a young man in his prime, strong yet lean. His clothing, deep reds, blacks, and hints of orange, suggests a family of means, though not ostentatious wealth. But it is not his attire that holds her gaze. His features are soft, refined, carrying an unspoken kindness. His resting expression is calm, almost serene. A face untouched by the world's cruelty, perhaps even naive to it. There is something disarming about him, something that tugs at her, something she cannot yet name. Then suddenly he moves, dashing toward the stage to take his turn. Isabella exhales sharply, realizing only then that she had been holding her breath. Rolando's performance is flawless, as always. His voice, his gestures, the way he draws his audience into the very essence of the words. It is mesmerizing. When he reaches the end of his second poem, the crowd erupts into cheers, and to Isabella's horror, she realizes she is doing the same, applauding. Like the women in the front rows, their eyes full of admiration, their hearts full of longing. A cold shiver crawls up her spine, not from the winter air, but from the unsettling realization that has begun to take root. Today, Rolando sells no pamphlets, but it does not dampen his charm. He bows gracefully, thanking the crowd with effortless charisma before disappearing into the city streets. Isabella remains standing, her hands pressed tightly against her chest, feeling the wild, erratic rhythm of her own heart. Only after a moment does she let out a slow breath, her body gradually settling. As she walks home, the weight of the evening presses upon her. Something is not right. Something is very wrong. She is falling for Rolando. The thought unsettles her to the core. She, who prides herself on control, on standing her ground against anyone, now finds herself crumbling beneath something so simple, so base, so human. Guilt and joy battle within her. One tells her this is foolishness, that she is a woman of reason, not whimsy. The other whispers that it is already too late. Back home and still shivering, Isabella adds fresh logs to the fireplace before setting a pot over the hearth to cook something warm. She shakes her head at Rosso, sprawled lazily in his chair by the fire, utterly undisturbed since she left. As revenge for his idleness, she kneels beside him, gently taking his thick, winter-coated tail and brushing it against her cheek, an old provocation that never fails to rouse him after a few moments. As she eats her soup, the image of Rolando lingers, unshaken by the warmth spreading through her. Watching Rosso as he stretches and grooms himself on the floor, she muses aloud. Perhaps it's time to give him something new to recite. What do you think? Turning toward the window, she adds, Not today, I'm too cold. Tomorrow. Her gaze remains fixed on the misty glass, on the blurred spectacle of shifting clouds. She knows what is growing inside her, what has begun to take root. Perhaps it is time to stop resisting, to nurture it, feed it, allow it to bloom. Perhaps her time has come. Lifting another spoonful of soup, her eyes flick toward the dwindling stack of firewood. I suppose I'll have to go out after all. She looks down at Rosso, who pretends not to hear. But this time, you're coming with me. Good morning, Signor Libre, Isabella calls out in a teasing tone as she steps inside. Hello, you? Shut the door, I hate the cold, he grumbles, already in a sour mood. Isabella unwinds her shawl, pausing to sniff the air. What is that smell? The smell of wasted money, Libre replies darkly. One of my scribes misspelled a word on a book cover, so I threw it in the fire. He turns toward his copyists, shouting, That's 8 soldi gone to the pigs. With a dramatic sigh, he composes himself and shifts his attention back to Isabella. His expression softens, just slightly, into something resembling a smile. I hope you've brought something for me, young signora, because I do have something for you. Isabella, still in a playful mood, smirks. I hope you have what I think you have. Then perhaps I might have something someone needs to have, but only if you have it first. So, do I have it? Libre frowns. In a dry, exasperated voice, he mutters, You're a beautiful young woman, but a truly awkward one, I might add. He strokes his chin, feigning deep thought. But I think we can strike a deal. I show you mine, you show me yours. He chuckles at his own joke and pulls a small wooden box from beneath the counter. Flipping it open, he counts 24 soldi into a neat pile on the table, then snaps the lid shut and slides the box aside. Your move, little one. With a knowing smile, Isabella unwraps a bundle of pages from the folds of her shawl, placing them beside the coins. 8 pages of fine poetry, courtesy of Signor Vittorio Ferro. Libre scoffs, pressing a hand to his chest as if wounded. 8 pages? I gave you 24 soldi. This is a robbery. He huffs but takes the papers anyway, already skimming through them. Tell your uncle I expect more next time. Isabella, unbothered, sweeps the coins into her hand with an amused grin. My uncle thanks you, signor. Of course he does. Libre waves her off. Now go away and come back soon, with more. Isabella wraps her shawl back around herself, still smiling. Have a pleasant day, Signor Libre. Libre grumbles under his breath as she walks out the door. Spring finally arrives in Padua, its warmth and renewal not a moment too soon. Inside the church, Costanza and her groom stand before the priest, their hands clasped, the air thick with incense and quiet reverence. Isabella and Vittorio sit toward the back, away from the clustered witnesses who fill the front rows. 40 or so guests from both families, while a few other townspeople kneel in scattered pews offering silent prayers. As the ceremony concludes, the newlyweds step out of the church, bathed in the soft glow of midday light. Costanza, radiating life, sweeps past Isabella and Vittorio with an elated glow. She wears her much-dreamed-of burgundy dress, and for the first time, Isabella acknowledges that she does look beautiful. Yet she also notes the absence of the floral splendor Costanza had envisioned for her wedding, a quiet casualty of the season's lingering chill. As they descend the church steps, a familiar presence lingers in the periphery. Ginevra meets Isabella and Vittorio's gaze with a fleeting, almost hesitant smile. Vittorio, ever cautious, returns it just enough to avoid raising suspicion. Isabella, however, remains unreadable, her expression as composed as ever. On the walk home, the sun sits high and Isabella tilts her face toward the sky, absorbing its warmth, letting it sink into her skin. Vittorio's voice is soft when he finally speaks. "I intend to ask Ginevra to be my wife." Isabella lowers her gaze, meeting his for a measured moment before answering simply, "I understand." Vittorio continues, his voice careful yet firm. "That means she will be living with us. I truly hope you two will get along. I know both of you will do your best, but you've never lived with another woman before. It might take time to adjust. Just give her a chance, Isabella. She is a good woman. She deserves it." His last words are accompanied by a strained smile, a telltale sign of the weight behind them. "Will you do this for me?" Isabella exhales, her voice steady. "I can do that for you, Uncle." Vittorio's face softens. "Don't ever forget, you will always be my first girl." Then, in a rare display of tenderness, he lifts his hand and gently cups the side of Isabella's head, drawing her toward him. He presses a kiss to her hair and murmurs, "I love you, Isabella." For a moment, Isabella stands still, caught off guard by his rare admission. But then, something in her eases. Without hesitation, she wraps an arm around his back, leaning into his embrace. Resting her head against his chest, she whispers, "I love you too." With her newfound fortune, Isabella indulges herself once more, this time in a fine, oversized red scarf. The purpose of her purchase becomes clear when she arrives at Rolando's next recital, the fabric draped carefully to conceal her head and neck. Hidden within the folds of her new disguise, she listens as he recites one of her previous poems, his voice carrying the familiar verses with practiced ease. But it is the next piece, the newest one, that holds her breath still. She has poured herself into these lines, weaving her thoughts, her longings, her very essence into the words. And as Rolando speaks them aloud, they resonate deep within her, stirring something primal, something almost familiar, like an old memory reawakened. The reaction from the crowd is divided. Some seem entranced, drawn in as she is, their expressions softening in quiet understanding. Others shift uncomfortably, uneasy with the undercurrents laced within the imagery, with the way certain lines suggest emotions they might rather leave unspoken. Isabella admires Rolando's audacity for choosing this poem, for daring to bring such implicit meaning to the surface. By the end of his performance, no one steps forward to buy the pamphlet, not today, but Isabella suspects that will change. The words have been heard, and words, once released into the world, rarely fade into silence. As Rolando disappears into the city streets, Isabella adjusts her scarf and turns toward the market. With her basket in hand, she sets about her errands, filling it with fresh produce and dried herbs. This ritual, watching, listening, shopping, has quietly woven itself into the fabric of her weeks. It has become a part of her. Isabella. Her name rings through the house, the unusual sharpness in her uncle's voice pulling her from her thoughts. She pauses, a half-peeled vegetable in her hand, the first harvest from her garden this year. Intrigued, she dips her fingers into the water, rubbing off the soil before drying them on her apron. Descending the stairs, she enters the workshop to find Vittorio and Donato positioning a young woman onto the preparation table. The sight unsettles her, though she cannot immediately understand why. Something feels off. The woman's clothing is of fine fabric, the embroidery delicate, marks of wealth and high standing. As Donato secures the body, Vittorio nods, dismissing him. Only when her uncle turns toward her does Isabella fully step forward, her gaze lingering on the still figure before her. "This is a special order," Vittorio explains, standing beside her. "Her name is Tiziana Cortusi. Yes, that Cortusi family, one of the most prominent in Padua." His voice is measured, but there is an unmistakable weight to his words. "She fell from her window yesterday, broke her neck." He exhales, shaking his head. "Death is always a tragedy, Isabella. But for some it carries, some more than others. I don't usually give you cases with injuries, but she's in relatively good condition. I trust you can handle it." His eyes linger on her, awaiting confirmation. Isabella steps closer, studying the woman properly now, and in that moment she understands what had been nagging at her. Recognition dawns. "Yes, uncle," she murmurs, her tone more solemn now. "I'll take care of her." "Good. Her father wants her ready by tomorrow. He's paying for full service, so Donato and I have our hands full today." Vittorio pats her shoulder before heading for the door. "Thank you, Isabella." Once alone, Isabella takes in Tiziana's features. She had been beautiful, is beautiful. Barely 20, her face delicate and refined, skin pale but still holding traces of warmth. Her long black hair shimmers, fanning over the table like strands of silk. Her expression, though devoid of life, remains peaceful, almost as if she is merely resting. Isabella murmurs, voice barely above a whisper, "I remember you, 2 years ago, outside the university." A faint, almost wistful smile tugs at her lips. "You were the most beautiful woman in Padua, and despite everything, you still are." Her gaze drifts to the red garments laid out beside her, the ones her family has provided for her final journey. After a brief prayer, Isabella removes Tiziana's silver jewelry, setting each piece carefully aside. With steady hands, she begins to unfasten the woman's clothing, working methodically as she has done countless times before. But as the fabric peels away, something unusual catches her attention. Faint streaks of dried mud clinging to the back of her dress, darkened and crusted where the fabric had met the ground. Small flecks have tangled into the long strands of her black hair, trapped between the waves like remnants of her final descent. Isabella pauses, her breath catching for a brief moment before she resumes. The presence of the dirt is an unspoken testimony to the fall, where her body had landed, where her last breath had left her. She continues undressing her with careful precision, but another detail gives her pause. Bandages tightly wound around the woman's chest, pressing her figure into something smaller, more contained. Isabella raises a brow but dismisses it at first. Perhaps it was simply a measure of modesty, a way to maintain decorum. However, as she continues, she realizes the bindings do not stop at the chest. They extend further, cinched around her waist in an unnatural constraint. A small, knowing smile tugs at Isabella's lips. She murmurs, almost amused, "Ah, so this is how you kept your perfect curves." She works carefully, lifting Tiziana's torso to remove the heavier garments beneath, but the movement causes the woman's head to shift unnaturally. The damage is stark. Her neck barely holds together, vertebrae crushed beyond repair. Isabella hesitates for a moment, then lays her back down, exhaling softly. With the dress removed, Tiziana now lies before her, still cocooned in layers of bandages, resembling a mummified figure. Removing them will not be an easy task. Isabella will need to unwrap them carefully. She begins at the chest, unraveling the first long strip. Bit by bit, the linen loosens, revealing more of the woman's body. Only then does Isabella realize what the bandages had been concealing. The compression had masked her natural shape, minimizing her feminine assets. But now, freed from their restraint, her form returns. Fuller, softer, unhidden, Isabella notes the unexpected depth of color in her skin, the darkened hue of her areolas, slightly swollen. A faint unease prickles at the back of Isabella's mind, but she pushes it aside. She moves lower, beginning to unbind the abdomen. This is more difficult. The tight wrapping has molded itself to the contours of Tiziana's body, and Isabella is forced to shift her carefully, rolling her slightly as she works. Unbeknownst to her, a small slip of parchment dislodges from the folds, fluttering to the floor unnoticed. As Isabella peels away the final layer from Tiziana's stomach, a thin, dark line is revealed, running from beneath her ribs to her lower abdomen. A shiver prickles down Isabella's spine. She stops, stares. A long moment passes. Then carefully she resumes her work, this time with newfound caution. When the last of the bandages fall away, the truth is undeniable. Tiziana was pregnant. For a moment, Isabella simply looks at her, silent. Isabella resumes her work, leaving the woman as she came into the world, unadorned and vulnerable in death. Methodically, she gathers the discarded garments and bandages, setting them aside for disposal. As she moves, her gaze lands on a small piece of parchment resting on the floor, dislodged from the wrappings. She picks it up, intending to discard it along with the rest. But something gives her pause. A flicker of curiosity stirs within her, and reads, "My sorrow is only matched by my disgrace. My child was created out of love, a love that abandoned me to sorrow. I beg of you, let my secret remain buried with me. I could not bear to see my family's honor torn apart by my shame, nor could I let my child be born into a world that would scorn us both. What I have done for love and for fear. Please let us rest in silence." Once more, Isabella gazes at the lifeless form on the table. A sorrowful smile tugs at her lips as she gently places her hands on Tiziana's cold cheek. Her voice is a whisper, almost as if speaking to the soul that has already departed. "I am sorry for what happened to you, Tiziana." Her other hand tightens around the note, the final confession of a woman who wished to take her secret to the grave. With a steady breath, Isabella brings the parchment to the candle's flame. The edges curl and blacken, embers eating away the ink until only ashes remain, the last testament lost forever. Turning away, her footsteps echo briskly against the wooden floor as she heads upstairs. A moment of silence follows before the rhythm reverses. Softer now, more deliberate. When she reappears, a Bible rests in her hands. She flips through its pages with purpose, stopping when she finds the passage she seeks. The baptism, Matthew 28. Reaching for a bowl of clean water, Isabella blesses it with reverence. She places a palm gently over the swell of Tiziana's abdomen, then begins to read aloud, her voice steady, the Latin verses carrying through the dimly lit room. At the conclusion, she dips her thumb into the water. Carefully, she traces the sign of the cross over the unborn child, murmuring, "I baptize you, Felice, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen." A single drop of water trails down the side of Tiziana's belly, vanishing into the wooden table. Now turning toward Tiziana, Isabella says, "Lord, she was afraid, she was alone. If she has sinned, let it be weighed not in punishment, but in mercy. May God grant you both passage into his kingdom." By mid-afternoon, Isabella steps back to admire her work. Tiziana has been restored, her body a perfect vision of what she once was. The dark red dress drapes over her frame, her slim figure preserved as though untouched by tragedy. A faint flush of color graces her cheeks, imperceptible but enough to suggest a peaceful slumber rather than eternal stillness. Her hair, once loose, has been carefully woven into an intricate crown of braids, a final act of grace. Her jewelry, symbols of her status, have been returned to their rightful place. For the final touch, Isabella gently arranges Tiziana's hands, folding them over her belly as if in quiet protection of what was lost. Isabella sits on her bed in silence, her mind lingering on the weight of the day's events. The room is dimly lit, the last golden hues of daylight stretching across the floor, casting elongated shadows. Her thoughts drift not only to the solemn task she carried out, but to the body she tended to. Tiziana, a woman of exceptional grace, untouched beauty, and a quiet, tragic stillness. She exhales softly, rising to her feet. Crossing the room, she opens her armoire and retrieves a small engraved wooden box. Setting it on her desk, she lifts the lid, revealing the Venetian mirror she purchased months ago. Its surface catches the fading light, and she tilts it slightly, watching how her reflection shifts. Slowly, she traces the contours of her face with her fingertips. Her nose, her cheekbones, the arch of her brows, the curve of her ears, the soft strands of her hair. She studies herself the way she might study another, seeking the familiar with a newfound detachment. Her features are round, lending her a youthfulness she sometimes resents, yet she knows she is not plain. She has seen men look at her with desire in their eyes. Setting the mirror aside, she reaches for the laces of her sleeping gown, tugging them loose. The fabric slips from her shoulders, gliding down her arms until the upper half pools at her waist, exposing her bare skin to the fading embrace of sunlight, letting the last golden rays caress her like a lingering touch. She lifts the mirror once more, this time letting her gaze wander lower. Her hand follows the path of her reflection, fingertips ghosting over the curve of her neck, the ridge of her collarbone. Her breath catches as she skims over her chest, assessing its modest shape, small but proportionate, sufficient. Her palm brushes over the faint lines of her ribs, the slight dip of her stomach. Her fingers pause at her navel, resting there. Her gaze lingers. Just beside it on the left, an inch-long birthmark interrupts the smoothness of her skin. An imperfection she has always been aware of, always too self-conscious to ignore. Something shifts in her expression. The moment fractures. Abruptly, she shuts the mirror, tucking it back into its box with a quiet finality. She pulls her gown back up, tying the strings with quick, efficient movements before sinking onto the bed once more, her mood darkened, her gaze reaching somewhere far beyond this room. Her teeth graze her thumbnail, a habit from childhood she thought she had abandoned. She stops herself, pressing her hands into her lap instead. The following afternoon, as Isabella contemplates a new poem, her thoughts remain tethered to Tiziana. She recalls seeing her outside the university, radiant, full of life, and utterly in love. But love, Isabella muses, is a cruel master, fleeting and merciless. The thought makes her scoff. A voice calls from beyond her door. "Isabella, it's Vittorio." A firm knock follows. She turns as he pushes the door open. "Come with me," he says. "Someone wishes to speak with you." Isabella frowns, surprised. "Someone for me? Who could it be?" Vittorio doesn't answer. He simply gestures for her to follow, and she does. Descending the stairs, Isabella's gaze immediately falls on Padre Ugolino, who stands beside a man of obvious wealth, his finely tailored garments and composed posture marking him as someone of status. "Signor Cortusi." She straightens herself instinctively. The priest inclines his head toward her. "Signor Cortusi, allow me to introduce you to Signora Isabella Ferro, the young woman I spoke of." Isabella offers a respectful curtsy, her tone measured yet warm. Signor Cortuzzi, please accept my deepest condolences for your loss. The man is broad-shouldered, almost a physical match for Vittorio, and of similar age. His features, though composed, hold the weight of grief, controlled, buried beneath an exterior of rigid restraint. His voice, however, is unnervingly cold. "Let us conclude this dreadful business," he says simply. "Show me to my daughter." Something in his demeanor unsettles Isabella, but she keeps her expression neutral. Vittorio nods and leads them deeper into the workshop. At the center of the room rests an elegant coffin, its polished wood gleaming, a work of fine craftsmanship fit for a family of such standing. With practiced ease, Vittorio lifts the lid, revealing Tiziana, lying just the same way as Isabella had left her the day before on the table. Signor Cortuzzi steps forward. He stares down at her in silence. Only a slight quiver of his lips betrays any emotion. Breaking the hush, Padre Ugolino turns to Isabella. "My child, Signor Cortuzzi has received troubling news regarding his daughter. Since you were the one to tend to Signora Tiziana Cortuzzi's mortal remains, as confirmed by your uncle, I must ask you this." He holds her gaze. "As a good Christian, tell us honestly, when preparing this poor soul, did you notice anything unusual?" Isabella feels her stomach tighten. Lowering her eyes slightly, she hesitates before answering. "Padre, I must admit I did see something disturbing." The priest's expression remains steady. "Speak freely, my child. You have nothing to fear." Isabella exhales softly, then lifts her gaze. "Well, when I undressed her, I noticed that her neck had been broken." At this, Vittorio's sharp eyes flick toward her in silent question. Isabella quickly continues, her voice composed. "I did my best to ensure it would not be noticeable, but if I have failed in that, I ask for your forgiveness." Padre Ugolino studies her for a moment before pressing, "And nothing else? You are certain, Isabella?" This time she meets his gaze squarely. "No, Padre, I noticed nothing else." A pause. Then the priest gives a solemn nod. "Very well. Thank you, Isabella." Turning to Signor Cortuzzi, he speaks with quiet finality. "There is no reason to delay the ceremony. Tiziana will be honored as she should be." A tremor passes through Cortuzzi's features. Faint, but there. His hand reaches out, resting over Tiziana's, his fingers pressing lightly against her cold skin. When he speaks, his voice is unsteady, a crack forming in the carefully maintained composure. "My angel, I am so sorry." His throat tightens. "I will miss you, my sunshine." His reddened eyes flick toward the priest, and with a slight nod he steps away. On his way out, he stops before Vittorio, extending a heavy coin purse. "For your expenses, as agreed." Vittorio takes it with a wordless nod. Turning briefly, Signor Cortuzzi directs a final glance at Isabella. His voice, though hushed, carries a note of sincerity. "Thank you, Isabella. You have done well. My daughter still looks as beautiful as ever thanks to you." Isabella dips her head in acknowledgement. As the priest and Signor Cortuzzi are about to leave, Isabella picks up Tiziana's dress, the one she arrived in, and says, "Signor Cortuzzi, this is your daughter's dress. You may want it back." She holds it out toward him. Signor Cortuzzi pauses, turning to face her. His gaze shifts from the dress to Isabella before he replies, "Keep it, in memory of my daughter." With that, both men depart. The silence they leave behind is weighty. Vittorio turns back to the open casket, Isabella standing beside him. Without a word, he loosens the purse's drawstrings, fingers dipping inside. He counts out 5 coins, pressing them into Isabella's palm. "Your wage," he says simply. "A job well done." Then pauses. "Our duty is to the dead, not the living." Then, after a pause, he reaches in again, withdrawing another 5 coins. He places them in her hand, his fingers lingering just slightly before letting go. Isabella smiles in content.